So first things first, let's get some admin business out of the way. Hey Andrew, welcome. So I have been looking at my diary, and it is quite it's made for some interesting reading. So I've decided that basically next week will need to be the it's Griffos. Okay. Yeah, next week is going to be the last one of these chats for the summer, because I said already that I was going to take a break over the summer, but just I thought I was going to start that in July. I thought it would be July and August, but actually I think it's going to have to be June as well, because it's just a bit crazy, and it'll be too intermittent for it to be worthwhile. So the last one is going to be on Saturday, the 1st of June. Hey Andrew, hey Ryan, welcome. So it's going to be the first Saturday, the 1st of June. But what I wanted to do is to put this idea out at the beginning, and then we can come back to it at the end. If there's anyone, you know how we've been doing this goals thing. If there's anybody that wants to set a goal for the 2nd of September, which is when I'm going to come back after the summer break, then have a think about what that could be. So that's a 3-month something basically that you might want to achieve. So it might be a chunk of a project that you want to get underway, or there might be something that you want to, like a whole project that you want to commit to finishing by September. So have a think about what that may be, and throw your hat in the ring and declare it at the end of this, and say you will have this done by this date. So one of the things that occurred to me over this week, because I set myself a goal of writing 3 chapters. I said it on the live chat before I'd actually checked what my plan had been, my schedule or whatever for this writing. So if for those of you who don't know, I'm writing a book, and so I thought, I'm not going to be able to write these 3 chapters, because actually I'm supposed to be proofreading right now. That's what I'd actually originally planned. And so I was in this dilemma. It's like, well, I declared to the group that I'm going to do 3 chapters, but actually the bigger plan is, that I'm supposed to be proofreading. And so I realised that there's a difference between a goal and a plan. And the plan, if the goal remains the same, i.e. what you want to achieve and the time frame in which you want to achieve it, how you plan to achieve that is always a movable feast. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to move with circumstances and adapt. So I really got in my mind that there is a major difference between a goal and a plan, because a goal is something more fixed, and that's the end game. If I don't write those 3 chapters, but I write 6 chapters the following week, or catch up the following week, then I'm really still honouring the goal, even though the plan has changed. So I just wanted to say that in terms of when you're thinking of the goal that you might want to achieve, because you might actually not want to set a goal for the 2nd of September. You might want to commit to a plan point, i.e. I don't know, say you're making a film, you might say, I want to have secured all my heads of department by the 2nd of September. Now, your goal is to make the film. It's not to have heads of department, doing their thing. So you can commit. So basically what I'm saying is you can commit to either a goal or a plan point. I don't know how best to describe it. Does that make sense? Okay, let me just go back on your comments. So for those of you that haven't been on this before, I do go back and I read the comments, but I usually try and finish the train of thought before I go back, just so that I can, so it's not all sort of bitty and jumbled. Anyway, Gwynnifer has joined. Hello. And Andrew says, I've got 3 weeks to finish about 6 months worth of college work. I won't get into uni. Oh my God. That's a lot. All right, well, we're behind you, Andrew. If you want to, declare an intention, obviously you would have had to have finished it before the 2nd of September, but we're behind you if you do want to declare an intention of, finishing that in the next 3 weeks. Ryan says you'll do it. He has faith in him. And Ronch 9051 has joined. Dagenham and Proud, Ryan, says, my goal is to knock 5 minutes off my 6-mile run. Wow, not much, but can't think of much at this present time. That's loads. Cool. Let's make it that. Let's declare them all at the end though, so that I can sort of keep track of them and write them down and all that sort of good stuff. Joaquim has joined. Steve has joined. Welcome. All right. So there's that. So guys, so Joaquin and Steve, I was just saying that the last live chat will be on the 1st of June for the summer, but I'm going to be back on the 2nd of September, and I was proposing that if people want to set a goal or a plan point that they want to hit by the 2nd of September to declare it at the end of this live chat conversation. So this live chat conversation is going to be split into 2 as well. I forgot to mention that bit, because last week there are a load of people that set a goal or a plan, however you want to describe it, of achieving something by today. And I've been trying to work out how to honour the conversations that we've been having for people that haven't made those declarations and still get feedback from those that have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the fear conversation now, and then I'm going to end this live chat. I'm going to come back on with anyone who wants to share and talk about their declarations, and we'll start a new session. I think it's worth coming, even if you didn't make the declaration, I think it's worth coming to both, because you might hear something or just get something about your own situation from somebody else's sharing. When I've done personal development workshops, I find that when you're actually the one sharing, that's not when you're taking the most information. It's when you're listening to other people sharing, because you're not feeling the pressure of being in the spotlight, so you're more open and available to hear what's being said. So I would recommend listening to the second part, and I don't think it's going to be very long. I think I don't know how long it's going to be, but I don't think everybody is here, so just stick around for that, because I think it could support you if you've got a goal or something that you're trying to achieve. So just a roll call of who that included. So it's myself, Ian, who said that he can't be here, Ellen, Tom, Steve, Asher, and George, who I think are all here. So, we'll see. We'll see if this works out. Anyways, so let me just go back on your comments here. Sorry if I'm sort of blah 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 blah, because I'm very aware of time as well. Okay, so Joaquin says miss me already. Bless you, thank you. So he says interesting. I was reading about the importance of listening this morning. Yeah, I mean I think I'll just say one thing about this, because this is what happens as I get into like really interesting topics and then run out of time. But I think one of the really interesting things about listening is listening with your entire body, listening with your whole being. So rather than just listening with your ears, which obviously, we do from time to time, but really taking in something with your entire being and really sort of being present to something. I have a vocal coach who says to listen sometimes like to open your mouth ever so slightly, and for some reason it means that you take in more. It's such a weird thing, but I've tried it. Like if I'm in lectures or something that's a little bit complicated, I just open my mouth ever so slightly. It sounds like a bit of a weird thing to do, but you do absorb that much more. So yeah, listening with your entire being is the next level of listening. Marshawn, welcome. Lydia, Makeup by Defray, hello. Okay, all right then, so that's that. I'm just making sure I get all the business taken care of. One other thing. So on top of the coming back at the 2nd of September after the break, I'm going to do 2 live chats on, don't worry, I'll tell you the dates, nearer the time or whatever, but I'll just tell you them now as well. Sunday the 8th of July and Sunday the 5th of August. So those are going to be literally just check in, how you're doing with your goals, a little bit of just like, cheerleading for you basically, and that's it. So I'm not completely gone into the ether. I'll just do those like monthly check-ins, and then we'll start again in September. So that's business out of the way. So fear. So I thought I wasn't thinking this would be the last topic, or penultimate topic, but here we are, fear, because I feel like fear is such a sort of critical component, maybe even a necessary one to sort of the creative experience. So, and it came out of like whatever we were talking about last week. It just really felt like it was the next thing to talk about. And rather like criticism and rejection, when we talked about those, like we sometimes think of the sexier side of the arts and being a creative and stuff, but we forget how big those excuse me, those things like fear and rejection and all the rest of it, how big a part they play in our daily creative lives. So I'm not gonna sort of deconstruct fear very much because we've talked about it so many times, but all I'll just say is this, that it's as much as anything, it's just a mechanism that your brain, that your mind creates to keep you safe. Because notice how we're not just scared of things that are tangible and real, like, I don't know, like if you're in a dark alley getting attacked or something like that. We're scared of weird things, like some people have a fear of like speaking in public. A lot of people have a fear of speaking in public. It's a ridiculous thing when you look at it on paper, but actually, if you think about it, it's just the mind's way of keeping you safe. And you know, as people always say when they're talking about fear, we're not being chased by saber-toothed tigers, but the same mechanism that would have you on your guard for a potential attack is the same mechanism that gives you the fear of you know, speaking in public, the fear of failure, the fear of being embarrassed, you know, all those things is all the same mechanism. And it's all just about keeping us safe. That's literally all the fear mechanism wants to do, is it wants to keep us safe. And the way that it knows to do that is to keep things the same. So, for example, the person who's scared of going on stage, well, if you don't go on stage and you stay exactly where you are, then you'll be safe. And don't do the thing that you're meant to do. You know, some people have been so terrified that they've not been able to actually do something like that. You know, sometimes you see it with little kids who, you know, they've had this opportunity to perform and they've been practicing and they really want to do it, but on the day they just are too scared. And that's the ego doing that. That's the fear mechanism saying, stay here. It's much, much safer here. So that's all it is. It's about just keeping things the same. And have you ever noticed as well that where you've been in a dangerous situation almost, but there's a part of you that just thinks, well, if I just stay still and stay here and stay quiet or whatever, maybe it'll be okay. There's a part of you that doesn't want to get to safety because that means you have to do something. You have to leave this safety. So the fear mechanism or whatever, and I think we have to, it's not the bad guy, it's not the villain, it's just this process doing what it does. It's like your eyes blinking, like it is just something that has to happen. And a lot of times it will keep you safe. It will make you look both ways before you cross the road. Because imagine if you didn't have that fear mechanism, the kind of terrible situation. I mean, many people would be dead by now. So it serves its purpose. But where it doesn't serve its purpose is when it comes to things like dreams and goals and change. Because literally the enemy of fear is change. But the problem is if you are experiencing fear about something that you want in your life, but you don't know or can't bring yourself to go out and get it, you have to bring in change to be able to get that thing. Therefore, you have to confront your fear, because fear is the thing that's keeping things exactly the way they are. If you've got fear, but not the thing that you want, you have to bring in change, and therefore you have to challenge the fear that you've got. Steve says, is it the fear of performance or fear that your content is not good enough to share in public? I mean, each person is different, so I can't speak to specifically what's going on, but my guess would be that a lot of people aren't, because fear that your material isn't good enough is quite a sophisticated problem, as it were, for someone that is, the fear is quite primal, I think, in those situations. So I think it is literally a fear of being exposed. You know, a fear. When I used to do stand-up, you know, do the bigger gigs, in fact, any gig, sometimes you just get this mindset, this idea in your head that this is going to be a disaster. And it happened quite a lot. And it was a sort of a dread, and I was in a workshop actually where I got an opportunity to really deconstruct what that dread was, and it was that they're gonna hate me. So I don't know if like fear of public derision, if that's what it is, or fear of So I think it's quite a primal thing. I don't even think the material necessarily will always come into it. I think that's like quite a classy sort of problem that may come later on down the line. But I think ultimately it is just this thing of being confronted with a sea of people looking at you with expectations that you may not be able to meet, and they will hate you for it. Again, there's no logic to it. Tony Bridger, welcome to the conversation. And Jennifer says, I have the fear of public speaking, and it doesn't even make sense because I'm a confident person, and that really bothers me. Okay, so all right, we'll talk about fear. We'll talk about all the different ways that it shows up. Hey, Tommy. So all right, I'm just going to work through some of the things that. Some of the fears that I thought of. If there's any that occur to you, then please like chime in and let me address those as well. But let me start with the fear of public speaking. Is that the difference between being a confident person amongst people that you know, or even with a smaller group of strangers, and the difference between, you know, speaking to there is something primal that tells you that this could go horribly wrong, but we perceive the threat like we perceive the threat of a saber-toothed tiger attack. We don't perceive the threat as, oh, that was a bit awkward. Never mind, anyway, brush it off. It is our biology, our biochemistry responds to this situation as though we were being attacked. I remember my very first stand-up gig. I could barely speak. I was shaking. My mind was just going over and over and over. And then I just stopped and I had this moment of clarity where I was like, I'm doing this because I said I wanted to, and I'm doing this because of a love of comedy. If I can't find in any of this enjoyment, a love of comedy, etc., I must leave. I literally thought that before my first gig, because it's like, why am I putting myself in this situation if I'm not going to gain any joy from it? And that really calmed my nerves down. But I still had like a lot of physiological things come up that I couldn't control. You know, I was speaking quickly and shaking and sweating and all this sort of stuff. So I get what you're saying, Jennifer. It is not easy. The one thing that helps me in those situations is to remind myself that my nerves do not serve the people that I have come to serve. So I'm just sort of getting my train of thought right for you. When you do stand up, if you're nervous or if there's something going on with you, the audience can tell. They can't they don't just see it, they feel it. So if you're vibrating at the if your vibrational level is nervousness, then you create a nervousness in the audience. They vibrate with you, and they might not be aware that that's what's happening, but they just experience this discomfort. And you ever been, to a show, whatever it is, could be any type of performance where the person is not confident, and you suddenly feel excruciatingly uncomfortable because that person is not in command of what they're doing. So it's so one thing I always remind myself is, if the audience can perceive that I'm nervous, then that's what I'm going to be doing to them. That's the gift I'm giving them. Is basically, it's like having anyways, I won't say that, but it's like it's not, you're there, you have to imagine yourself being there to be of service, and therefore one way to be of service is to not show that you're nervous. You can have it all going on the inside, but just don't make that their experience. Fake it if you have to, but don't make it that their experience. One other thing that an acting coach advice he gave to me, which I think is applicable really for the public speaking thing, is to put your attention on the audience. Think about what you're there to do for them, right? Because the reason that fear of public speaking becomes such an issue is because your attention is on yourself. And I know guys that have been on this regularly will know that I've spoken at length about get your attention off yourself. And this is one of those key moments where if you can get your attention off yourself and onto the task at hand, you will experience so much more peace. Because if your attention is totally on yourself, then it sort of it's a vicious cycle in the sense of you start going, oh my God, I'm shaking. How am I going to stop shaking? I'll clench my fist. Oh my God, my palms are sweating. How am I going to stop my palms sweating? I'll wipe it on my dress. Oh my God, I've just left a sweat stain on. You know what I mean? And you just like, you just reaffirm and reaffirm and reaffirm the terror and the horror of the situation. Whereas if you're able to breathe, know that you've got this, put your attention out onto either the task at hand or the people watching, and give them the gift of enjoyment or appreciation. I don't know what type of public speaking you would be doing, but give them the gift of you owning this, because there is nothing more joyful as an audience member than seeing a confident person up stage. That's why people love stand-up, is they don't want to see some shrinking whatever who's scared of being up there. They want to see someone who's so ballsy that they have got the temerity to get up in front of an audience and tell them jokes and just assume that they're going to be funny. I mean, there is a joy and a pleasure in that on top of enjoying the actual material. So get your attention off yourself. Know that you've got this. Know that fear is just doing what it does, and that there is a you beyond the fear that doesn't have to play out this thing, if that makes sense. So Joaquin says, hate me, you can relate to that. Yes, it's a legitimate fear. I think that's what a lot of people experience when it comes to public speaking or being in front of people. It feels exposing. And yeah, people are just like, I'm very familiar with that feeling of they're going to hate me. Rasmus has joined. Hello, Ian, hi. Marshall says a fear of Bumble. Me too. Ian, you made it. And Tom says the fight or flight response is the same, whatever the trigger. Exactly that. So Tom's hit the nail on the head. And I actually think that there might be another mechanism to that, which is freeze. Which I think a lot of people do as well. And it might not necessarily mean physically freezing, but that your brain freezes and you can't think of anything. I've certainly had that in situations like on panel shows where it is so, you're bombarded with triggers in those environments, because it's such an intense situation. And definitely I've had situations where my brain is just frozen and I've gotten into just this mad cyclical, like, you're not funny, you can't think of anything funny, and it just goes on and on and on and on, to the point where I've just been sat silent for like what feels like 3 years is actually probably 10 minutes or something like that. So the trigger doesn't have to be the threat of a physical attack. It can be existential. And if you perceive it as attack, it becomes a trigger, and therefore you get into this fight, flight, or freeze response to the situation. There's no tiger, but we still do the same. Cool. Just breathe as well, Gwyneth, because the other thing about fear is, and anxiety particularly, is anxiety is excitement minus the breath. If, a lot of problems, a lot of emotional situations that we find ourselves in, we could transform by breathing properly. People don't breathe fully. They don't breathe to their, the lung capacity is full and expel till it's empty. That we very short of breath a lot of the time, but we don't realize it. If you breathe fully, you will completely transform your situation, and then on top of that, then you can try all the other techniques. But just start with breathing. That will transform everything. Me7him, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Thank you for bringing us all on this journey with you. Oh, no worries. Cool. That's nice. All right then, so what else? So here's what's on my list then. So thank you for that one, Gwyneth. That was a good start as well, and it's one that affects a lot of people. Fear of not being good enough is another fear that creatives have. Well, I say embrace that rather than try and fight it. Just get that it is just another mechanism to stop you getting somewhere, moving forward, embracing or taking on the things that you really want to do. It's a little trick that the mind plays, telling you that you're not good enough, but actually embrace it, because my acting coach, Howard Fine, who his book is great. I think it probably would be a good read for any creative. He says that the people that, when he teaches class regularly, and he says the people that are most confident and most assured are usually the least talented, because he gets a new wave of students in every sort of few weeks, and so he's become well equipped to be able to tell who's who really are the talented ones. And he says, without a doubt, the ones with the self-doubt or the, you know, the anxiety about their ability, they're always the ones that have the talent. And the ones who are just like, I've got this, they're the ones that are most often the least talented. And actually, you know, when we were speaking before about arrogance, that's what it comes down to, is this assumption that you've got this, as opposed to recreating the self-belief in yourself every day. There's a very big difference between recreating the self-belief and checking in with yourself and constantly recreating that, as opposed to just being in this state of assumption, which is what I think is what I think arrogance is. So you the fear of not being good enough is almost like it's a projection into the future anyways, because it's not even like a fear of I'm not good enough today, it's like a fear of I won't be good enough. But if you have the capacity to learn and grow, then you have the capacity to become good enough. And if you have the capacity to learn and grow, you are probably the sort of person that will never settle anyways. And so you always have this experience of not good enough, because you're always going to be putting yourself into bigger and bolder situations. You're going to be basically taking on bigger problems, which is what I was talking about last week. So lean into this experience of not being good enough, because you are constantly expanding yourself. Yes, you are there by default ushering in this experience of not being good enough, because of your unwavering commitment to grow and to constantly be challenging yourself. Steve says, in the Hebrew language, the symbol aleph is specifically there to represent taking a breath. We could do with that in English. We could do with engaging people online. We could do with that. I'm not sure the last bit of the sentence, but yes, yeah. I mean, I think that the problem is that things like yoga, I think it's gotten hijacked as being used as something else. But yoga is supposed to be a breathing meditation. It's supposed to be a way to train people to be able to sit still and breathe in and out fully and experience the universe. Because I believe that the universe is at the beginning and end of every breath that we take. So if you can do a practice that trains you to be able to experience that, you can experience the universe. I don't do yoga. Never really got on with it. But I do, when things get stressful for me, breathe. Joaquin, tell us more about this AWARE, aware technique. Gwyneth, what's the book called? Sorry, I've lost track. Tell me which book. Did I reference the book earlier? Me 7 him. I uncomfortable experiences with fear have been a paralyzing sensation. As Tom mentioned, a fight or flight response. You may call me William. Good. All right, William. William it is. Waxbusher, catastrophizing. Yeah, we do that a lot, don't we? Of just like, it's a disaster, and we get into this like, what's it called? Vicious cycle. Citizen Joachim says, accept, watch, act normal, repeat, expect the best. Gotcha. All right then. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. So, fear that it's not gonna work out for me. Well, that's playing the problem before you've even got there. But that is a legitimate fear that people have, but it is unfortunately just playing, I've lost the game already. If you're not embarking on this, even partly because the journey is enjoyable, then it may be that it's not the right thing for you. Okay, Gwenfrey is asking about Howard's book. Tommy, what's it called? Is it called Fine on Acting or something like that? I think it's called Fine on Acting. So fear of it not working out for you. Yeah, if you can't enjoy the journey, then maybe it's not, because that's putting a lot of pressure on the results giving you happiness. I refer to my attempts at learning Spanish every now and again, and it's only sort of been in the last couple of years, because I talk about it a lot. And one of my friends' boyfriends is a Spanish teacher, and he's like, I'll teach you. Yeah, we can Skype and stuff. So I've got the opportunity. I've got a friend who's willing to teach me, but yeah, I'm still not starting it. And I slowly realised that actually I don't want to learn Spanish. I want to be able to speak Spanish. Therefore, I don't want to go on the journey. I'm not interested in the journey. I just want the sexy outcome. Therefore, I don't really want it bad enough. And so I've sort of let go of that idea of like learning Spanish. There may be a time when I make that work, when I want it enough, but I sort of got a bit of self-awareness about who I was really being around learning Spanish. And it was not someone who's committed to learning a language. It was someone who just fancies, who's on holiday every now and again, or meets a Spanish person and wants to be able to be cool and break out some Spanish, but I'm not willing to put in the graft to do it. So if you're worried about things not working out, then you've lost sight of what you're doing this for. That's kind of my point. The most important thing is the pleasure and joy from the journey. Even if the journey is difficult, you've got to derive some pleasure from it. You know, being in process, because process is everything. Process is the foundation. It's the building blocks of everything your career is going to be. So you've got to enjoy the journey. So worrying about it not working out is disrespecting the process. Hey, Elsa is waving, just joined the convo. And yeah, Tom has just put on the name of the book for Gwyneth, and for anyone else that may be interested. So there's a fear of failing. Obviously, the topic is fear. And I'm just rattling through, well, not rattling, we're just looking at some various ways that fear can show up for the creative. So, fear of failing. Again, it's kind of similar to it not working out, but you're scared that after all this effort, there's this thing called failure that could be waiting for you. It's very polar. It's almost like you're imagining, yes, there will either be, I'll open one door and there'll be failure through that door, and through the other door there will be success. And that's not how life goes. Anyone who's ever embarked on a really taken on building a creative career knows that there's failure, success, failure, success, success, failure, success. But even that is a kind of a judgment, like calling it that, because really there's like event. Some events are ones you want, and some are events that you don't want. Because I look back over my whole career, and I really genuinely had to think, and I think to myself, I can't really think of any failures. I can think of things that have definitely not gone the way I wanted them to. I can think of things that are definite breakdowns, but I don't hold them like failures. I'm not thinking, oh God, that's it. When the thing happened, I didn't think that's it for me. There's been stupid little things that have made me think that. Like there was one time when I got hired to do an improv show by the same people that had employed me many times before, and I said, yeah, no problem, this thing was going to be on TV as well. Yeah, no problem, I can improvise, because I just didn't know really what I was letting myself in for, and I didn't really know what a proper actual skill set improvisation is. Anyway, so it got to I think it was like the second day of rehearsal, and I was just like, this is awful. I am so out of my depth. I was so out of my depth, and to the point where I had an eye appointment, I think on the 4th day, to have laser surgery, and I couldn't wait. I would rather have had my eyes cut open than continue with this job. And I was like, I was just like freaking out, like thinking about this job, how it's going to be when it goes out. I'm going to be awful, blah blah blah. And then a couple of days after the surgery, maybe 3 or 4 days before we were due to film, I got a call from the boss man, and he's just like, listen, God, this is so awkward, but basically you're fired, and he said it in a really lovely way, very caring, very, I felt very held by the whole thing. And he says, obviously we'll pay you to the end, but we just don't feel like you're completely comfortable, all this sort of stuff. And I was just like, thank God thank God for this. I was just so relieved. That you could classify as a failure, but I don't think back to that as a failure. I think it's kind of a funny thing. At the time I was kind of like, kind of a bit mortified, but like I just think of it as a funny thing that just kind of happened. So this idea that there's this end point called failure or success, it's a lie. That if you haven't taken the bold step of starting the journey that you will allow yourself to start believing, when in actual fact there is this constant rolling, barrage of events happening to you as a creative, that if you want to put a label on them, you could call them wins and successes, or failures and losses or whatever, but actually it's just shit happening, and just this constant stream of stuff is gonna happen. So there is no failure unless you stop. And even then, that's not necessarily a failure. That might be you just making a new plan, setting a new goal. A girlfriend of mine, she was an actress, and she, had been doing it for 10 years. And I met her doing a play together. We did a play together, and maybe 2 years into having known her, she was just like, you know what? I'm out. I want kids. I want a husband. I don't want this. I don't want this uncertainty, because her career hadn't shaped up the way that she had wanted it to, and she just felt like it was too unstable. And her choice was she hasn't failed. She's just made a new plan. So we should disavow ourselves of this idea that there's some sort of failure waiting for us. Again, it's one of those triggers that makes us have a fight or flight response, when actually it's just made up bullshit. Cool? All right, so okay, so Andrew says, that's fantastic. Too much focus on the end goal without looking forward to the journey, getting there. Hadn't really thought of it that way before. Yeah, the journey is critical, because otherwise that's just way too much importance put on getting the thing that you think. I have a friend who has won a BAFTA. Friend, and I said, wow, I saw it on her mantelpiece. I was like, I didn't know this. I was like, my God, what was it like? And she said, to be honest, it was pretty hollow, because I think she'd had a bereavement or something like a few days earlier. And so what you imagine would be a lot of filmmakers and actors and creatives' goal actually turned out to be a pretty hollow experience. Now imagine if her whole career was orientated around getting this thing, and then that is what the experience was like. But luckily, I don't think she does. I think her happiness is orientated around constantly being and having access and creating opportunities in her field. And so the BAFTA was cherry on the cake rather than the be all and end all. Tom says there's no such thing as failure, only success and learning experiences. Only successes and learning experiences. Yeah. And Steve says, I think we need to contextualize fear. If we're afraid of doing something and it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean we should never attempt anything. Well, absolutely. This is what I'm saying, is like, if you want something, you're gonna have to push through some fear at some point. And if it doesn't work out, if you label that as a failure, your brain might tell you, or your mind might tell you, don't ever try that again, because look what happened the last time. And that's what happens to a lot of people. Remember that last time that you tried to be in a relationship, and then people get all fearful about relationships. Or remember that last time you tried to quit your job or something, and then it didn't work out, and you ended up in a job you hated. Stay where you are. But it's your, look, at the end of the day, it's your call. You can keep things exactly the same, and there's no harm, no foul. But what I'm saying is, and what I'm talking to, is the part of you that does want something specific and does want to achieve a particular goal. You're gonna have to confront that fear, and it's not about beating the fear. It's about taking it on and try. Where's my quotes? Mandela said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but triumph over it." So that's what the game in town is. It is not waiting until the fear is gone and then moving, somehow vanquishing the fear and then being able to move. It's moving with the fear. And that's what a lot of people don't get, is that, like, starting is not necessarily going to be comfortable. Starting could involve having a lot of fear. Even when I started doing these live chats, it took me a long time to get to starting, because I was fearful. I was, in my head about how are people going to perceive these? Are people going to think I'm a know-it-all? Or, because I'm not talking about comedy or doing comedy on these things, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of mental conversation. But I realised that, I've got to, walk my talk. But also, you do have to just jump afraid. Viola Davis says, jump afraid. You do have to just crack on. Elaine, welcome. Gwyneth says, I like your mindset. It's very inspiring. Well, thank you, Gwyneth. Marshall says, the universe closes doors for a reason, so you can follow a path that's truly yours. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I want to call this, rebrand this thing that we're doing, like North Star, because I want to plant that idea that there is a true, we all have our true North Star, and we have our own individual one that we follow, and that is truly your path and will take you to where you are supposed to be. It might not always make sense, but it will take you to where you're supposed to be. Wax Pusher Andrew says, I think that our emotions are part of our primitive brain, and our ability of cognition allows us to override our emotions, which is why there is so much conflict within us. What side should win? Which side should win? I mean, that's exactly, you're absolutely right. And actually, the thing is about emotions is they emotion, like they're in motion, they're never static. So do you follow your emotions, or do you reference off the bigger, higher part of you? Because emotions are biochemical reactions as much as anything else. It's the mind that calls that biochemical reaction happiness, sadness, fear, grief, excitement, whatever. They're just, these things are just things going on in the body. Our mind gives it a label. So do you want to reference off that, or do you want to reference off a higher part of you that is about achieving a particular goal that you've got in mind, or getting something done, or being a bigger person in a moment? Because how many people get into arguments because of emotions coming up, rather than taking a moment just to think logically and just get what's happening, and just depersonalize the situation just a little bit, and then then respond from there, rather than having this reaction, emotional reaction. So which side should win is not I don't want to get into like the duality of like good and bad or whatever, but it's like just getting, because you said here that we have the ability to override our emotions, but so many times we don't. So many times we don't take a breath and just clap back, as they say. So which side should win? It's like, which side do you want to win? Who do you want to be? So George says, I gave up academia because it wasn't stable enough, but I still struggle with not seeing that as failure. Rationally, it was the right decision, but emotionally, it's hard to let go of. All right. So if emotionally wait, let me just make sure I've got this right. You made a choice and you feel like rationally it was the right thing to do. If you're giving yourself a hard time emotionally, then that's something you're doing to yourself, because the choice has been made. And it doesn't mean that at some point in the future you can't overturn that decision. It doesn't mean that at some point you can't go, actually, I do want to be in academia and it does feel right for me. It may not have been your time to be in academia. That's why that might be what the dissonance is that it may be that you're meant to have that experience, have a break from it, and then go back. I mean, I don't know anything about your situation, but if there's a little bit of a bit of unrest in you about it, maybe there might be a bit of unfinished business. But don't do that to yourself. If you can, don't give yourself shit about a decision that you've already made. Just go with it and then see what unfolds next. Because on some level, it made sense for you to do it. Hold Black has joined. Welcome. Tom says Mandela's quote is a better, more eloquent version of feel the fear and do it anyway. That's basically what he's saying, isn't it? Asher says he likes the North Star idea. Okay, Tom, in a scientific study, participants were asked to solve logical problems. They used the emotional part of the brain. Logic versus emotion is actually not a real fight. They use the emotional part of the brain. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Right, okay, they use the emotional part of the brain to solve a logical problem. Let me sit with this a second. Let me just sit with it a second. Okay. So, other fears. Fear that it's too late. I mean, again, I've spoken about this, and named people that have come to their careers, people who are famous that we know of, who've come to their careers very late and succeeded. One recently is a comedian called Dave Johns, who I kind of know, I've met and gigged with on the circuit, and he recently was brought in. Well, it must have been 3 years ago now, but brought in to read for a Ken Loach film, and he got the lead. I had Daniel Blake, and they ended up winning the Palme d'Or, and getting praise and lauded and award nominations all over. And he is 60, I believe. And just before that, he was talking about, I mean, I don't know whether he was joking or not, but talking about getting an ice cream van. So this idea that somehow it's too late. I had a whole other career. I realised yesterday that I didn't actually start acting until I was 30. I had a whole other career working in post-production. I had a good job. If I'd followed that path, I'd probably be quite corporate now, but I'd be doing well. If I, continued on the trajectory I was on, but it just didn't feel right. And so, this idea that it's too late is like, that's just a story one tells oneself. If you want to do something, either the circumstances will be things that you have to navigate around, or they become the things that stop you, and the choice as to which one they are is yours. Fear that it's too soon, i.e. you're not ready. This is again a lie, because really the only thing that you need to start is you. Even if you don't have the ability for it, if you've got the capacity to learn and grow, which I said earlier, then you're ready to start. You have more resources at hand than you think. You have people in your network. You have people with money. You have people with a willingness to help you. You have, if you really sit down, and I really advise you to do this, take a second if you feel like you're lacking, especially if you're feeling like you're lacking in resources, take a second to sit down and write down all the things that you have, and let your brain sort of free associate with this. Don't be stuck on just material items. Yes, computers and all that sort of stuff, and a car and all those sorts of things are great resources, but there might be people in your network. That your network is a resource. If you speak a language, that's a resource. If you've had previous skills as an accountant, or a previous job as an accountant, or do you know what I mean? All those. If you can use Excel, if you know how to put together a good Excel spreadsheet, you might end up being a great producer if you're trying to make a film. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's more. Every one of us has underestimated the number of resources that we have access to. And when you really sit down and think about them, you're like, shit, I could really achieve the things that I really want. And if I don't have the resources immediately, I know someone that does, or I'm a couple of steps separation from them. Fear of the unknown. I certainly have that, of just like stepping into something and I don't know where it's going to lead, how I'm going to achieve it. Just remember the drive home. When you drive home at night through a quiet, dark country road, your headlights are on, your fog lights are wet, whichever, I don't know what they're called, but the big powerful beams. They don't light your path all the way home. They only light the next 20 or 30 yards or whatever. And they continue to light the next 20 to 30 yards until you get home. So that is how to navigate the unknown, is just to remember that as long as you can see the next little bit ahead, that's all you need, because everything else will start to get illuminated the closer you get to it. You don't need to see home. That might take you off the road. You just need to see the next 20 yards of road ahead, and that will get you where you want to get to, as long as you stay on the path. So those are just some of the things. I'm going to move on now, though. I'm going to skip that because I want to just, got 10 minutes left. So I just want to bring us back to, let me just go back to what Tom said. See if I can, I don't think you need me to say anything to that, but I'm just having a think, about using the emotional part of, I don't think I know what it is. I don't know anything about brain science. That's why I can't say anything about that. All I know is that emotions change, and that there's so many sayings about don't make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. So if you're feeling agitated or something about a situation, don't quit your job because somebody pissed you off. Really take a minute. If that's been on your mind to do that anyways, and that was the catalyst that you're like, do you know what, that's it, I'm out, then fine. But don't have that situation arise and make a huge decision that permanently affects you based off of one moment when your anger or whatever, pissed offness or whatever was brought up in that moment is going to subside. You know, that's really all I know. And that sometimes sometimes the choices that are for are in our very best interest are not logical. And so I feel as though some decisions are of the heart, and that's not to say emotions, but of the heart. And I think of the heart as a compass, and that's again why this true north thing is significant to me. Is I think of I think of a compass. I think of the heart as a compass, and therefore is always navigated towards your true north. Following your heart is always going to take you onto the right path. I feel like when you have this gut instinct, not necessarily an emotional feeling, but a gut instinct that this is the right thing for you to do, then that's the step that you should take. And therefore, George, who was talking about the academia choice, if you feel like in your gut that it was the right thing to do, then you did the right thing. That it doesn't necessarily mean that your logical brain is going to be cool with it, or even your emotional side is going to be cool with it. But if you feel like in your gut that it was the right step at that time, then own that and just let go of what the brain is doing, and eventually it will dissipate. The more you hold on to these thoughts, the longer they tend to linger. Andrew says, no doubt MRI scans showed up that the amygdala was in use while trying to solve logical problems. I suspect solving such problems requires more than one lobe or cortex, and that proves how little I know about brain science. So I'm going to stay out of that conversation. Ian says every limit is a beginning as well as an end. Exactly, if you want to see it that way, because some people will use those ends as an end, and they will just see it as an end, not a beginning of something great. All right, so got 7 minutes. I want to set you up to win while I'm gone. So I want to say these things, and I will try not to expand on them, just make my point. And then after that, I want to invite anyone that wants to throw down this 3-month goal or plan that they have to put it in the comments. In fact, you can do that while I'm speaking. Also, before I do this setting you up to win thing, I want to introduce you guys to Tom Swanston, who is on here. He is a life coach, and he has offered this group, anyone on this group, a free introductory life coaching session. And so I said that I would mention it to the group because I think it's really worth taking on. I have a coach, and there you go, there's Tom saying hello. I have a coach, and the difference that it's made to my career, my happiness about my career is immense. And so I advise you to take Tom up on the offer. Even if you just have one session, have the conversation and just see what you get from it. I haven't worked with Tom before, but I know Tom and trust him, and I would recommend that you have a conversation with him at least, just to see what's there for you. Anyways, all right, here we go. Setting you up to win. Anyone who's got any goals or 3-month goals that they want to throw down to be completed by on or around the 2nd of September, then also pop them down in the comments. So this is for this 3-month period while I'm not with you guys. You don't need me for motivation. That's the first thing. If you need motivation from an external source, then you don't want this thing, your goal, enough. You have enough about you to get the thing done. You just need to get on with it. Okay? And if you're not getting on with it, then either it's not the right time or you don't want it enough. Okay? So just get on with it, and you've got this. Your dream should be your motivation. Don't let circumstances or anything like that get in your way. Yes, there will be circumstances to deal with, but don't let them stop you. You have everything you need to get started. I just said this before basically, but you have everything you need to get started. The biggest resource you have is you. You are your main asset. So everything else comes from that, including your dream. So of course you're not going to dream something up if you couldn't create the resources and the skills and the wherewithal to do it. Why would you? It's just impossible. It's just, and it would be ridiculous. It may not seem doable to you, but your dream, resources, and ability to do it, it's one and the same thing. So your consciousness would not dream up something that it didn't believe it had the ability to achieve. It just might mean that you have to pull some resources together to do it, and overcome some stuff. As I said before, if you have the capacity to learn and grow, then you have the capacity to do the thing that you want to do. You've really the capacity to do anything, because beyond initial talent or aptitude is what I would call it. Anyone who is skilled at anything, that's particularly in the arts, and particularly people that we know of, i.e. are famous, have applied themselves time and time again, even though it's drills and they hate it. Even Usain Bolt, who hates training, trains. So don't underestimate the power of just continuing to do. Put your 10,000 hours in. Except that it won't be easy. This road is not going to be easy, but focus on where you want to get to. And when that becomes overwhelming, focus on those 20 meters ahead of you on the road. If you start, you're already winning. Success is by your own definition, not by anybody else's. So if just by starting you consider that as a success, then my friend, you have won. Don't let anyone else tell you what your success should look like, be it society, your family, friends, other artists in your field. Your definition is the only one that matters. And get out of your own way. Make sure that the reason that you're not getting what you want isn't you. And picture the end. Picture the end. Picture the end that you want. Picture the end. That's what I meant. Okay, so picture the end. That when you get to your deathbed, this archetypal deathbed that we all talk about, imagine thinking of the goal that you had and imagine not having tried. You don't want that on your deathbed. You want to at least have tried. When you're on your deathbed, you want to look back and say, I gave it a shot. I did my best. I gave it a shot. Not, I wish I had done these things. All right, guys, I'm getting the countdown. So I'm going to pick this up on the other side. So anyone that wants to make their declarations, do it at the beginning of the other one, of the next live chat, which I'm going to start in like literally 1 minute. I'm supposed to start the union the 1st of September, so finish all my college work and achieve a high enough mark to do so. Great. Just keeping a check on the time. George says, get the research done for the novel. Yes, 3-month goal, like it. Thank you, Tom. Tom says, fantastic live chat. And Steve says, I will have started the process to discern if I am to be ordained or not. Whoa. Okay, Steve, you need to get some specificity around that. Cool. All right, guys. I am going to restart this chat so that please come back on and declare those again so that I can make notes and not feel rushed. But thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm going to pick this up on the other side. And if anybody wants to share how they got on this week with their plans and goals, then we can do that on the other side of this. I always never know how to end these things. Anyways, I'm going to end now and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, bye.